Welcome back to Fiction Flux. Today, we're diving into an epic new crossover fanfic, What If Luffy Was Reincarnated in the Demon Slayer universe? Let's not waste time and get straight into the story. Thunder rumbled across a cloudy sky, and in the middle of a quiet, misty forest, a boy slowly opened his eyes. His clothes were torn, he had no shoes, and his iconic straw hat gone. He didn't know where he was, how he got here, or even why his stomach was growling louder than a boar's roar. He sat up with a groggy look on his face, glanced around, and mumbled, "Man, where's the meat?" This boy wasn't normal. His name was Monkey D. Luffy, well, it was. Now, in this strange new land, he had no memories of his adventures across the seas. No ships, no devil fruits, just a strange instinct that told him to move forward. And most importantly, that he was very, very hungry. He wandered through the forest, nearly tripping over roots and trying to chew on random plants. Blah, everything here tastes like grass and sadness, he groaned. Then, he froze. He sniffed. A delicious smell floated through the air. Roasted something. Meat. His eyes sparkled. Food. He took off like a rocket, sprinting through the trees, dodging branches, and leaping over rocks with bizarre agility. But as he reached the clearing, his happy stomach rumbling dream came to a halt. There it was, a demon. Pale skin, claws like blades, and blood dripping from its mouth. It stood over a villager, ready to strike. Luffy blinked, confused. "Hey, that's not food." The demon turned its head slowly. "Who are you?" "I'm hungry," Luffy answered casually. "But you look ugly, like a really bad pickle." The demon shrieked and lunged, claws slashing the air. But before it could even touch him, Luffy vanished and reappeared behind it, delivering a solid punch to the back of its head. The demon flew into a tree, crashing with a loud bang. Luffy looked at his fist. Huh, that felt fun. The demon stood back up, furious. "You, human, you'll regret that." It jumped again. This time, Luffy grinned. "All right, let's play." He twisted in midair, his body moving like rubber, and delivered a kick that knocked the demon through a second tree. The ground shook. Just then, another presence burst into the clearing. A sword slashed through the air, clean, precise, deadly. "Get away from the demon!" Tanjiro Kamado shouted, his Nichiren blade gleaming. Luffy blinked. Whoa, that's sharp. He bounced back just in time to avoid getting sliced. "Hey, I already beat up the ugly thing." Tanjiro paused, confused. "You beat the demon?" "Yup. Punched it. Twice," Luffy nodded proudly. Tanjiro studied him. The boy didn't look like a demon slayer, no sword, no uniform, no breathing technique. But the demon was clearly downed. "Who are you?" "I'm Luffy, and I'm starving." "You're not normal, are you?" "Nope." And just like that, Tanjiro had no choice but to drag this weird, stretchy, food-obsessed mystery boy with him. Back at the core HQ, things got even stranger. Zenitsu freaked out at Luffy's weird energy. "He's got a death aura. I swear, he's like a demon who wants snacks." Inosuke, naturally, wanted to fight him on sight. "Stretchy dude, let's rumble." Luffy didn't even hesitate. Yes, finally, some fun. The two of them went crashing through walls, bouncing off ceilings, while Tanjiro facepalmed and Nezuko watched from her box like, "What is my life?" Even Giyu looked mildly annoyed, which for Giyu is practically screaming. Meanwhile, the Hashira debated what to do. He's not trained, he's not registered, but he took down a demon barehanded. Maybe he's another demon slayer from a lost region. No, he's something else entirely. Despite the confusion, Tanjiro vouched for him. "He's kind. He protected someone. That's enough for me." And so, Luffy was allowed to stay, temporarily. He didn't understand breathing styles. He didn't even care about demons. But when he saw one threatening a village again the next day, he punched it into a mountain. Tanjiro began to notice something strange. Luffy healed quickly. He never got tired. His punches bent the laws of physics. And most weird of all, when asked about his past, Luffy would just scratch his head and say, "I dunno. I just know I want to eat and protect people." But late one night, as he stared at the moon, a flicker of memory flashed before his eyes. A wide grin. A straw hat floating on the sea. A promise. He grabbed his head. What was that? Somewhere far away, hidden deep in the forest ruins of an ancient temple, a demon stared into a pool of water. That boy, he's not from this world. Another voice hissed behind him. Then we must destroy him, before he remembers who he really is. The wind howled across the mountain pass, sending leaves spiraling into the air like whispers of something coming. Back in the butterfly mansion, Luffy was doing what he did best, stuffing his face. He had 3 bowls of rice in one hand, skewers tucked behind his ear like pens, and a giant grin on his face. Tanjiro watched in disbelief. I still don't get where he puts all of it. He doesn't even gain weight. Doesn't even chew, more like a black hole, Zenitsu muttered, eyes wide as Luffy inhaled another dumpling. Inosuke slammed his hand on the table. This is war. If I eat more than you, I win. Luffy didn't even look up. Okay, let's go. A chaotic eating contest broke out, turning peaceful dinner into a battlefield of crumbs and spilled soup. Meanwhile, Shinobu stood in the doorway with her usual eerie smile. You know, if he keeps eating like this, we'll run out of food by next week. But beneath the laughter, something strange was brewing. Luffy had been waking up in cold sweats, muttering things like, Grand Line, Shanks, and once, Zoro, stop sleeping on my meat. Tanjiro was worried. Maybe, he's remembering things. Nezuko tilted her head, looking at Luffy curiously. She reached out one day and poked his cheek. It stretched. She poked again. It stretched farther. Then Luffy grinned. Hee hee, you're fun. Nezuko giggled through her bamboo muzzle, and from that moment on, the two were best buds. But the peace didn't last long. A new mission came in. Multiple villages attacked. Survivors whispered of a terrifying demon, one that didn't eat humans, but instead, absorbed them. Tanjiro, Zenitsu, Inosuke, and Luffy were sent to investigate. On the way, Luffy kept bouncing through trees, making monkey noises and pretending to fly. I'm Super Monkey Boy, he shouted, dangling from a branch. Get down before you break your neck. Zenitsu panicked. Let him fall, Inosuke shrugged. Maybe he'll evolve. When they reached the village, it was quiet. Too quiet. Buildings were broken. The air was thick. Tanjiro sniffed. Blood, fear, and something else. Then, it appeared. A figure cloaked in shadows. Its body shifted like liquid. Eyes like polished glass. It turned toward Luffy. You don't belong here. Luffy raised an eyebrow. You look weird. You were a mistake. A soul ripped through the walls of reality. You were never meant to exist in this timeline. Tanjiro stepped forward. What do you mean? The demon ignored him. I've seen many anomalies, but you reek of another universe. Luffy didn't get any of that. Alright, enough talking. Let's fight. But the demon didn't move. It only smiled. You want to know the truth, don't you? About your past, about the hat you can't remember, the sea you dream of every night. Luffy froze. That struck something deep. Tanjiro saw it, his usual goofy energy flickered. How do you know about that? Luffy asked quietly. Because I was sent to watch you. And when the time is right, I'll tear the truth from your very soul. Before anyone could react, the demon vanished. No trace, no scent, just gone. Luffy stood there, fists clenched, no longer smiling. Inosuke blinked. That was creepy. Zenitsu was already hiding behind a tree. This is bad. Really, really bad. Tanjiro stepped beside Luffy. Hey, you okay? Luffy didn't answer right away. He stared at the sky. Then, slowly, he whispered, I think, someone's waiting for me. And far away, in the deepest parts of the demon world, a figure sat on a throne of shadows. Their hand held a straw hat. Old, worn, familiar. They smiled. He's waking up. The night grew colder as the group made camp in the woods. A small fire crackled in the center, casting shadows across their tired faces. Tanjiro was sharpening his blade. Zenitsu was shaking under a blanket, muttering about cursed hats and cosmic horror. Inosuke had climbed halfway up a tree and passed out. But Luffy, he just stared into the flames, eyes unfocused. Tanjiro glanced over. You've been quiet since the fight. Luffy blinked, then slowly looked his way. That demon, he said stuff that felt real. Like it wasn't just talk. You think he knew you from before? I don't know. But when he said the word, hat, I felt it. In my chest. Like I was missing something really important. Tanjiro nodded. Maybe your memories are sealed. Or maybe you were brought here for a reason. Luffy poked the fire with a stick. If someone's waiting for me, I need to find them. Zenitsu peeked from under his blanket. Yeah, or maybe don't find them. I mean, did you see that guy? He looked like someone who eats souls for breakfast. Luffy grinned faintly. Good. Then he won't be hungry when I punch him. Suddenly, the wind shifted. Tanjiro's nose twitched. Something's wrong. Inosuke, half asleep in the tree, dropped down. Yeah, I smell a fight coming. Then it happened. A ripple in the air. A tear, like someone was slicing the very fabric of space. A hole opened right in front of them, dark, swirling, pulling at the ground like a black hole. From inside, a voice. Echoing, layered, ancient. You're not ready yet, Monkey D. Luffy. But time won't wait. Tanjiro stepped in front of Luffy, sword drawn. Who are you? The voice didn't answer. Instead, an arm reached out, long, inky, shifting, and grabbed Luffy by the shoulder. Tanjiro slashed, but the blade passed through like smoke. Luffy's eyes widened. What is this? My body, it feels like it's burning. The voice spoke one last time. When you remember who you truly are, the world will tremble. Then the portal snapped shut. Luffy collapsed to his knees, gasping. Tanjiro rushed over. Luffy, talk to me. Are you okay? Luffy looked up slowly, his eyes glowing faintly with something, an old power, dormant but waking. He opened his mouth to speak, but instead of words, he roared. Not a human sound. Something, deeper, something ancient. Inosuke took a step back. Zenitsu screamed and fainted. Tanjiro stared in shock. Luffy, what are you? And deep in the Demon Slayer core, behind locked doors and sealed scrolls, an ancient record glowed for the first time in centuries. On its cover, an emblem of a straw hat, split in half. The forest was silent now. The only sound was Luffy's heavy breathing as he knelt on the forest floor, his hands trembling slightly. Tanjiro, still stunned by what just happened, watched him with cautious eyes. Luffy, he said gently, that voice, that power, was that inside you all along? Luffy looked up slowly. The glow in his eyes faded, replaced by his usual carefree look, but something was different. Beneath the smile, there was a tension. I don't know, he said, voice quieter than usual. But it felt like something woke up. Like something old. Tanjiro nodded. Then we have to figure this out. Whatever that was, it's connected to you being here. And if demons know it too, then I gotta get stronger, Luffy said firmly, standing up and cracking his knuckles. Stronger than ever before. Inosuke suddenly charged in. You screamed like a monster. I wanna learn that. Teach me. Zenitsu, still on the ground twitching, muttered, why'd I travel with lunatics? Back at the Demon Slayer Core HQ, Kagaya Ubuyashiki stared at a glowing scroll, his expression unreadable. The soul of another world has entered our fate, he whispered to the Hashira around him. Gyu crossed his arms. He's not a threat. I've seen him protect people with no hesitation. Tsunemi growled. That scream shook the mountains. We don't even know if he's human. Mitsuri put a hand on her chest. But he has a kind heart. I felt it when I watched him play with Nezuko. Kagaya turned toward the window, gazing into the stars. The question isn't what he is, he said softly, but what he'll become, when the truth finds him. Somewhere far, far away, past every forest, mountain, and village, behind an ancient shrine lost to time, a pair of red eyes blinked open. Luffy, a whisper echoed. I've been waiting for you to wake up. The shrine was buried in vines and moss, forgotten by time, untouched by humans for over a century. But deep within its chambers, lit by flickering blue flames, a figure sat cross-legged, shrouded in tattered robes, hair long and wild, body covered in old seafaring tattoos that pulsed with strange light. He held something in his hand. A tiny piece of straw. He smiled. So, the fruit chose him again, he whispered, voice rough like crashing waves. Even in this cursed world. Back in the butterfly mansion, Luffy was still unconscious. His friends had carried him there after the incident in the forest. Tanjiro sat beside him, hand tightly gripping a damp cloth he'd been using to cool Luffy's forehead. He hasn't moved since last night, Tanjiro whispered. Maybe he's dreaming, Mitsuri said softly from the doorway. Or, remembering. Suddenly, Luffy twitched. His mouth moved. Meat. Tanjiro blinked. He's alive. Yup, Zenitsu muttered, peeking from behind the doorframe. He's definitely alive if food is still his first word. But then, Luffy's eyes opened. not slowly, snapped open, golden, not brown, not black, golden, like the sun blazing at noon on the open sea. He sat up straight, sweat dripping from his brow. I saw a man. In a robe. He had my straw hat. Tanjiro leaned in. What else? What did he say? Luffy looked at him. He called me, Joy Boy. Everyone went silent. Mitsuri's heart skipped a beat. That name, I've read it before. In the Forbidden Scrolls. Inosuke snorted. Sounds lame. Who names their kid Joy Boy? Sounds like a clown. Zenitsu slapped his shoulder. You sound like a clown. But Tanjiro wasn't laughing. Joy Boy, wasn't he some kind of ancient hero? A being of hope. Luffy looked at his hands. If I was him before, why am I here now? Then a knock echoed through the mansion. Not gentle. Boom, boom, boom. Shinobu opened the door. A messenger crow flapped in, dropping a scroll into her hands. She read it, and her eyes went wide. They've found a new demon. One that's hunting anomalies. It's already devoured 3, and it's heading this way. Tanjiro stood. We'll stop it. But the crow wasn't done. It spoke. In a voice none had heard before. A challenger has awakened. A remnant from the world of seas and storms. If not stopped, he will tear the veil between realities. Everyone turned to Luffy, who was now standing in the center of the room, glowing faintly. I don't know what's happening to me, he said, his voice steady, but if someone's messing with this world, I'll stop them. And maybe, just maybe, I'll find out who I really am. And somewhere, in a sea of black mist and drifting bones, the demon with glassy eyes smiled once more. He remembers. Thunder cracked across the sky. Not a storm, not lightning, something else. Like the world itself was warning them. The mansion shook slightly. Tanjiro rushed to the window, nothing outside. Just wind and clouds. Zenitsu was under the table again. Okay, new plan. We don't leave the mansion. Ever. But Luffy stepped forward, gripping the railing as his golden eyes scanned the horizon. It's calling me. Tanjiro looked at him. The demon. No, Luffy said, voice low. The sea. I can hear it, even though there's no ocean here. Mitsuri whispered, that's not possible. Inosuke shrugged. Maybe his brain's melting. Mine did once. Tasted like berries. Luffy shut his eyes. He could hear waves crashing, feel wind on a sail that didn't exist. His hands trembled again, but not with fear. Something inside him was waking up. Then another message arrived. This time not by crow, but by portal. Right in the middle of the hallway, a rip tore through space. A black envelope fell from thin air and landed on the floor, perfectly intact. Shinobu picked it up, opened it, and read aloud. To the one known as Luffy. Your past is bleeding into your future. The Demon King fears what you will become. Come to the Forgotten Coast. Alone. Tanjiro immediately stepped forward. No way. You're not going alone. Luffy gave him a small smile. I've fought gods, dragons, and talking skeletons. I can handle this. Zenitsu blinked. Did he say talking skeletons? Mitsuri clenched her fists. At least let us follow from a distance. But Luffy just turned toward the door, tightening his makeshift scarf. No. If I want answers, I have to do this my way. With that, he leapt out the window, stretching his arm to grab a tree, slingshotting himself into the sky. Tanjiro shouted, Luffy, wait. But he was gone, soaring through the sky, memories he never lived flashing behind his eyes. A scarred red-haired man. A flag with a skull. A hat blowing in the wind. And a voice. You were meant to bring freedom to every world you touch. Meanwhile, at the Forgotten Coast, the waves churned unnaturally. On the jagged rocks stood a figure cloaked in storm clouds and shadows. The same one who held the torn straw hat. He whispered, let's see if you're ready, Joy Boy. Luffy shot through the air, the world below him blurring into streaks of green and blue as he rocketed toward the Forgotten Coast. His heart beat faster, not from fear, but from the strange pull in his chest, the same pull that had guided him since his first steps on the sea. The world felt wrong here, though. Like it was shifting. The edges of reality were jagged, cracked, like something ancient had begun to stir. As he neared the coast, the wind grew colder, the air thicker. A massive cliffside loomed ahead, dark and forbidding, with waves crashing against it like hungry beasts. It was here that Luffy could feel it most, something waiting for him. He landed with a thud, sending dust flying up in the air. The ground felt unstable underfoot, like the very earth was unsure of itself. Luffy took a deep breath and let out a loud, confident yell. "Hey, whoever's waiting for me, I'm here," he shouted, hands on his hips, looking around. For a long moment, there was only silence. Then, out of the shadows, the figure appeared. Clad in tattered robes, his hair wild and gray, the figure stepped forward. His eyes glowed red, an ancient, unsettling light that seemed to pierce through Luffy's very soul. He held a weathered straw hat in his hands, the same one Luffy had seen in his dreams. Luffy's chest tightened. "That's my hat," he said, voice soft but steady. The figure's lips curled into a smile, but it was not kind. "It's more than just your hat, boy. It's a symbol of something greater. Something far beyond your understanding." Luffy took a step forward, his fists clenched. "What are you talking about? You have my hat, give it back." The man's smile widened, but there was no humor in it. "You still don't get it, do you? You've been brought here for a reason, Luffy. A purpose you cannot yet comprehend." The world around them seemed to distort, reality flickering like a bad signal. The air vibrated with an ominous energy, and Luffy could feel something inside him stir. The man continued, his voice low, almost mournful. "You're not just from another world. You're an anomaly, a break in the chain of fate. And the demons here, they can sense it." Luffy's mind raced. "What does that mean? What are you trying to say?" The man raised the straw hat above his head. "I'm here to give you a choice. A chance to return to the sea you belong to. But it comes with a price. You'll have to give up the world you've found here. The bonds you've formed. The people you've met." Luffy's eyes narrowed. "I don't care about that. I'll always find my way back to my friends. And no one takes my hat." The figure sighed, lowering the hat. "You're stubborn, I'll give you that. But know this, if you choose to return, there are consequences. You'll have to face the very thing you've been running from, the truth of who you really are. You'll have to awaken your true power, and destroy the demons that are hunting you." Luffy's heart beat faster, but this time it wasn't from fear, it was the rush of something more powerful. The feeling of purpose. "Then I'll fight," he said, his voice rising. "If I have to fight demons to protect my world, then that's what I'll do. But no matter what, no one takes my freedom." The figure chuckled softly. "Then let's see if you're truly ready. Your memories, they're coming back. But are you prepared to face the man you were before?" Suddenly, the ground beneath them cracked open, and a massive shadow began to rise from the depths of the coast. It was like a living nightmare, twisted, horrifying, and impossibly large. A demon, no, something else, that was older than the world itself. Luffy's fists tightened. "This is what I've been waiting for." The figure stepped back, eyes cold. "You've awakened a force far more dangerous than you realize. Face it if you dare." Luffy turned to face the giant demon emerging from the darkness, its glowing eyes locked on him. "I don't back down," he said with a grin, stretching his arms. "I'll punch my way through this, just like I always do." With that, he leapt into the air, fists ready to strike. And as the demon roared, the coast itself seemed to tremble, echoing with the cries of a world on the edge of something far greater than anyone had expected. To be continued. Luffy shot through the air, the world below him blurring into streaks of green and blue as he rocketed toward the forgotten coast. His heart beat faster, not from fear, but from the strange pull in his chest, the same pull that had guided him since his first steps on the sea. The world felt wrong here, though. Like it was shifting. The edges of reality were jagged, cracked, like something ancient had begun to stir. As he neared the coast, the wind grew colder, the air thicker. A massive cliffside loomed ahead. Dark and forbidding, with waves crashing against it like hungry beasts. It was here that Luffy could feel it most, something waiting for him. He landed with a thud, sending dust flying up in the air. The ground felt unstable underfoot, like the very earth was unsure of itself. Luffy took a deep breath and let out a loud, confident yell. "Hey, whoever's waiting for me, I'm here," he shouted, hands on his hips, looking around. For a long moment, there was only silence. Then, out of the shadows, the figure appeared. Clad in tattered robes, his hair wild and gray, the figure stepped forward. His eyes glowed red, an ancient, unsettling light that seemed to pierce through Luffy's very soul. He held a weathered straw hat in his hands, the same one Luffy had seen in his dreams. Luffy's chest tightened. "That's my hat," he said, voice soft but steady. The figure's lips curled into a smile, but it was not kind. "It's more than just your hat, boy. It's a symbol of something greater. Something far beyond your understanding." Luffy took a step forward, his fists clenched. "What are you talking about? You have my hat, give it back." The man's smile widened, but there was no humor in it. "You still don't get it, do you? You've been brought here for a reason, Luffy. A purpose you cannot yet comprehend." The world around them seemed to distort, reality flickering like a bad signal. The air vibrated with an ominous energy, and Luffy could feel something inside him stir. The man continued, his voice low, almost mournful. "You're not just from another world. You're an anomaly, a break in the chain of fate. And the demons here, they can sense it." Luffy's mind raced. "What does that mean? What are you trying to say?" The man raised the straw hat above his head. "I'm here to give you a choice. A chance to return to the sea you belong to. But it comes with a price. You'll have to give up the world you've found here. The bonds you've formed. The people you've met." Luffy's eyes narrowed. "I don't care about that. I'll always find my way back to my friends. And no one takes my hat." The figure sighed, lowering the hat. "You're stubborn, I'll give you that. But know this, if you choose to return, there are consequences. You'll have to face the very thing you've been running from, the truth of who you really are. You'll have to awaken your true power, and destroy the demons that are hunting you." Luffy's heart beat faster, but this time it wasn't from fear, it was the rush of something more powerful. The feeling of purpose. "Then I'll fight," he said, his voice rising. "If I have to fight demons to protect my world, then that's what I'll do. But no matter what, no one takes my freedom." The figure chuckled softly. "Then let's see if you're truly ready. Your memories, they're coming back. But are you prepared to face the man you were before?" Suddenly, the ground beneath them cracked open, and a massive shadow began to rise from the depths of the coast. It was like a living nightmare, twisted, horrifying, and impossibly large. A demon, no, something else, that was older than the world itself. Luffy's fists tightened. "This is what I've been waiting for." The figure stepped back, eyes cold. "You've awakened a force far more dangerous than you realize. Face it if you dare." Luffy turned to face the giant demon emerging from the darkness, its glowing eyes locked on him. "I don't back down," he said with a grin, stretching his arms. "I'll punch my way through this, just like I always do." With that, he leapt into the air, fists ready to strike. And as the demon roared, the coast itself seemed to tremble, echoing with the cries of a world on the edge of something far greater than anyone had expected. Luffy's fist collided with the demon's monstrous face, sending shockwaves through the air. The sheer force of the punch shook the ground beneath them, splintering rocks and sending waves crashing against the cliffs. But to Luffy's shock, the demon didn't stagger. It didn't flinch. Instead, it let out a guttural laugh, its deep voice vibrating through the very earth. "Is this it?" the demon taunted. "Is this the strength you're so proud of, Joy Boy?" Luffy's eyes widened, but the name didn't faze him. He'd heard it before, but now, hearing it from the demon's lips sent a cold shiver down his spine. His entire body burned with an intense energy, something deep within him begging to be unleashed. Without hesitation, Luffy pulled his arm back, his body glowing with the faint golden light that had begun to pulse within him. "I don't know who the hell Joy Boy is, but I'm gonna find out, and take this demon down while I'm at it." The demon's massive, clawed hands reached toward Luffy with terrifying speed, but before it could strike, Luffy stretched his arm out in a flash, punching it square in the chest. The force of the hit was enough to send the demon reeling back, its body slamming into the cliffs behind it, crumbling the stone into dust. Tanjiro, Inosuke, and Zenitsu had arrived just in time to see the explosion of force. They stood in shock at the sheer power radiating from Luffy. Is that him?" Zenitsu asked, his voice barely a whisper, his eyes wide with disbelief. "Yeah," Tanjiro said quietly, his eyes trained on Luffy. "That's Luffy. He's not like anyone we've ever met before." Inosuke cracked his knuckles. "Well, he's strong. I'm gonna fight with him." But Luffy wasn't finished. His golden eyes glowed brighter as he began to spin, his body twisting unnaturally fast. He whipped his body forward, his arms shooting out like a cannonball as he shouted, "Gomu Gomu no." Before he could finish, the demon roared in fury, its body shifting and twisting like a serpent. It raised its claws, slashing through the air with speed Luffy barely had time to react to. The slash sent Luffy hurtling through the air, crashing into the cliffside. The impact left a massive crater in the stone. "Damn it," Luffy muttered, pulling himself up. "I can't let this thing win." But as he stood, the demon's voice echoed in his mind, deeper, almost suffocating. "You can't stop me, Joy Boy. You were never meant to be here. You're just a shadow of a memory, lost in a world that doesn't belong to you." Luffy clenched his fists, his body still humming with power. "I don't know what the hell you're talking about, but I'll stop you. I'm not going anywhere." The demon began to move again, but this time, it wasn't just attacking. It was talking, and its words cut through Luffy's determination like a knife. "Your true power lies dormant, Monkey D. Luffy, you may have the strength of a beast, but that's all you are. A beast. A child who will never know what it means to be free." The word stung, but Luffy grinned through the pain. "I don't care who you think I am. I'll show you what it means to be free, demon." His body began to glow brighter than ever before. The power within him surged, wild, untamed, and ancient. As the demon prepared for another strike, Luffy shot forward like a bullet, his arms stretching with explosive force. Gomu Gomu no, Gigant Gatling. A barrage of punches rained down on the demon with overwhelming speed, each hit echoing like a thunderclap, creating shockwaves that rattled the earth. The demon staggered back with every blow, its monstrous form beginning to crack under the relentless assault. Tanjiro's eyes widened. He's moving faster than before. Luffy's golden energy seemed to reach its peak, his arms elongating impossibly as his fists pummeled the demon relentlessly. He could feel the strange power surging inside him, urging him to fight, to win, but it wasn't just the devil fruit power. It was something more. Something deep within him was awakening. The demon staggered backward, its body trembling as the ground beneath it began to crack. "No, this can't be," it roared. Luffy grinned. "You were right about one thing, demon. I'm not from this world. But that doesn't mean I'm just gonna let you wreck it." With a final, explosive punch, Luffy drove his fist into the demon's chest, sending it flying back into the sea, its body disintegrating into black smoke. The ground trembled as the beast let out one final, echoing roar before disappearing into the waves. Luffy stood there, panting, sweat dripping down his face. His body was glowing with golden energy, but his usual carefree smile never left his face. "That was fun," he laughed, his voice echoing across the coast. But as the dust settled, the figure in the robe stepped forward once more. "You've proven yourself, Luffy. But this is just the beginning. You've awakened something that's been dormant for centuries. The world will not stay quiet for long." Luffy turned to face him. "I'm ready. I'll protect this world, my friends, and my freedom, no matter what comes next." The figure's eyes glinted with a mix of amusement and caution. "We shall see. The tides are shifting, Luffy. And the true battle has yet to begin." As the figure began to fade into the shadows, Luffy felt the pull of the sea again. He didn't know what awaited him next, but he was ready for it. The winds were changing. The storm was just starting. And Luffy was going to sail right through it. The figure disappeared into the shadows, leaving Luffy standing alone on the jagged cliffs. The wind whipped around him, pulling at his clothes, but he didn't flinch. His golden energy still hummed inside him, but the world around him seemed to be shifting again. Something was coming. Something bigger. He looked toward the horizon, where the sun was setting, painting the sky in fiery reds and purples. It was beautiful, but Luffy's mind wasn't on the sunset. It was on the future, the uncertain, dangerous future that awaited him. But that's what he thrived on. The unknown, the adventure, the freedom. As he began to walk toward the edge of the cliff, his thoughts drifted back to his friends. To the people who had fought beside him. His memories were still fragmented, like pieces of a puzzle scattered across time and space. He wasn't just Luffy anymore. He wasn't just the rubber-powered pirate from a distant world. There was something more to him now. Something ancient. His fist clenched as the weight of it all settled in. But no matter what, he would keep moving forward. After all, there were no obstacles that could stop him, not with his will, his friends, and his straw hat. Then, without warning, the ground beneath him trembled. He barely had time to react before the sound of heavy footsteps reverberated from the forest behind him. Luffy spun around, fists raised, ready to face whatever new danger was coming for him. The massive figure that emerged from the trees wasn't human, though. It was a giant, towering over Luffy, easily 3 times his height, with dark, matted fur covering its body and glowing red eyes that seemed to pierce through the air itself. Its massive hands were clenched into fists, and its breath came out in low, menacing growls. Luffy's golden aura flared up, his body shifting in preparation for battle. But the giant didn't immediately attack. It simply stood there, staring at him with an intensity that made Luffy's chest tighten. The giant's voice rumbled like thunder. "You're the one who broke the barrier." Luffy tilted his head, confused. "Barrier? What barrier?" The giant snarled, "The barrier that keeps the demons sealed. You're the one who opened it." Luffy's heart sank. He had no idea what the giant was talking about, but he wasn't about to let anyone threaten him or his world. "I don't know what you're talking about, but if you're here to fight, then bring it," Luffy said with a grin, his voice filled with that familiar challenge. The giant roared, charging forward with a speed that belied its massive size. Luffy leapt into the air, dodging the giant's fist as it slammed into the ground with earth-shattering force. Luffy didn't give it time to recover. He stretched his arms and shot forward, delivering a powerful punch right into the giant's chest. The blow sent the giant stumbling back, but it didn't fall. Instead, it straightened up, its glowing red eyes narrowing. "You think you can defeat me so easily, Joy Boy?" The giant growled. "You have no idea what you've done." Luffy's grin widened. "Well, I guess I'll have to find out then." The fight raged on, Luffy bouncing around with his rubbery limbs, dodging and attacking with rapid precision. The giant, for all its size and power, couldn't land a single hit on Luffy. Each blow was blocked or avoided with ease as Luffy used his newfound strength and speed to overwhelm it. But despite the giant's relentless attacks, there was something in the air. Something wrong. The ground beneath their feet continued to tremble, and Luffy could feel it, the presence of something even bigger, even darker than the giant. Suddenly, the air grew thick, as though the very atmosphere itself was being crushed under the weight of a massive force. The giant staggered backward, eyes widening in realization. "No," it whispered. "It's coming." Luffy frowned, not understanding. "What's coming?" Before the giant could answer, the earth cracked open beneath them, splitting wide as a massive shadow rose from the depths of the world itself. A giant, hulking figure emerged from the chasm, its body surrounded by dark, swirling mist. It had no eyes, just an empty, gaping void where its face should be, and a pair of enormous claws that scraped the ground as it stepped forward. The air seemed to warp around it, and Luffy could feel it, a deep, oppressive presence that suffocated everything in its vicinity. It was a being of pure darkness, the kind of force that twisted reality itself. Luffy stood tall, his body glowing with golden light as he stared the creature down. "I don't know what the hell you are," he said, his voice unwavering, "but I'll fight you. Just like I fight everything else." The creature's voice boomed, deep and malevolent. "You cannot fight what you do not understand, Joy Boy. You are nothing but a spark, a flicker in a dying world. And now, your time has come." Luffy's heart raced, but his resolve didn't waver. He had no idea what this was. No idea what was happening. But one thing he did know, he would never back down. Not from anyone, not from anything. And as the giant shadow loomed over him, Luffy's body glowed brighter, his fists raised to fight once more. Whatever came next, he would face it head-on. The storm was only just beginning. Luffy's stance remained firm, his fists raised in defiance against the massive shadow looming before him. The air itself seemed to buckle under the pressure of the creature's presence, but the more the darkness pressed in, the more Luffy seemed to shine. "You really think you can take me down that easily?" Luffy grinned, his body glowing even brighter. "I mean, come on. I've fought way worse than whatever this is." The shadow creature let out a low growl, its formless body shifting in unsettling ways. "You dare mock me, human?" Its voice boomed, rattling the ground. Beneath them. "Yeah, I do," Luffy said nonchalantly, pulling out a piece of meat from his bag and chomping down on it. "It's pretty easy to mock something that doesn't even have a face." The creature's glowing, void-like eyes narrowed, but Luffy didn't seem to notice or care as he chewed happily. You know, you'd be a lot more terrifying if you had some kind of face. Or, like, a neck. Yeah, a neck would really help with the intimidation factor. You're all, shapeless. The giant demon's rage seemed to grow, its form writhing as if it were a collection of swirling shadows, but the insult made it pause. Even in the midst of its fury, Luffy's mind was filled with thoughts of food, and the taste of the meat in his mouth was so satisfying that he forgot for a moment that a gigantic, reality-warping monster was trying to destroy him. The giant creature raised its claw and swiped toward him, its movements quick and brutal, but Luffy, in his usual fashion, didn't even break a sweat. He jumped backward, his body stretching like rubber, causing him to bounce across the air in an exaggerated arc, and then landed right behind the creature. You missed. But hey, if you're hungry too, I've got plenty of meat. He said, holding up the piece of food with a playful grin. The creature growled in frustration, but it was momentarily thrown off by Luffy's ridiculous antics. For a split second, Luffy had done nothing but act like a complete goofball, and it worked. The creature hesitated, unsure of how to respond to the strange, carefree pirate. Luffy, not missing the opportunity, launched himself into action. He shot forward, his body twisting and bending, and slammed his fist straight into the creature's side. The impact was so strong that the shadowy form of the monster jerked sideways, sending a ripple of dark energy spreading across the ground. You know, Luffy said in between punches, this fight is way too serious. I mean, I thought we were supposed to be having fun. Can't we, like, take a break or something? The giant shadow monster screeched, its claws tearing into the ground in a desperate attempt to land a blow, but Luffy just stretched and dodged with exaggerated moves, like a circus performer. Each time the creature tried to strike, Luffy bent backward or jumped in the air, making it look like he was playing a game of dodgeball, not fighting for his life. See, this is why you need a face, Luffy added, cracking his neck. It's really hard to take you seriously when you look like a giant floating blob of darkness. With another dramatic leap, Luffy landed right in front of the creature, his arm extended like a slingshot. He grinned from ear to ear. Gomu Gomu no, punch. His fist shot forward with the force of a cannon, making contact with the demon's core. The demon reeled back in shock, its shape beginning to flicker as Luffy's punch landed. Ha, that's what you get for being so grumpy. Luffy laughed, wiping his mouth with the back of his hand as if he were simply wiping off crumbs after lunch. The creature roared, but the sound was now desperate, its form distorting and crackling as if it couldn't hold itself together. You think you've won? The demon rasped, its voice twisting with both fury and dread. This world will never be free. Luffy just shrugged, crossing his arms. I mean, it could be fun to try and make it free, right? I don't know about you, but I'm all about freedom. With that, Luffy kicked off the ground, launching himself straight into the air and twisting his body in the familiar motion of his most powerful attack. He felt the energy building in his body, the power surging from deep within. Gomu Gomu no. As he spun toward the demon, his body stretched further and further, growing in size and speed as his golden energy flared. Gigant. He twisted in midair, his limbs winding back as if they were a coil ready to spring forward. Pistol, Luffy shouted, his punch smashing straight into the demon's core. The impact sent shockwaves across the coastline, causing the ground to tremble and the sky to flash with a bright golden light. The demon screeched once more, the force of Luffy's punch shattering its form into a million shards of dark energy. As the creature disintegrated into nothingness, Luffy landed back on the ground with a carefree roll and stood up, grinning like he'd just won the biggest fight of his life. He brushed his hands off as though he'd just finished an afternoon stroll. Phew, that was a good workout. Now, where's my next meal? Tanjiro and the others, still in awe at the ridiculousness of the battle, stared at Luffy, completely stunned. Inosuke was the first to speak, though, his eyes wide in disbelief. That guy is insane. Inosuke shouted, rubbing his head. He fought a demon like it was nothing. Luffy spun around, giving them all a thumbs up. Yeah, easy peasy. Who's ready to go get some food? I'm starving. Zenitsu, still shaking, could barely get his words out. I don't understand how he's this strong. And that casual about it. Tanjiro smiled softly. He's not just strong. There's something else to him, something incredible. Luffy was already walking away, heading toward the forest, completely ignoring the stunned looks on their faces. Alright. If you guys want food, you gotta keep up. I'm not waiting around. Inosuke shot ahead, eager to find something to eat, while Zenitsu and Tanjiro followed hesitantly, still processing what they had just witnessed. The bizarre, absurd battle had been won, but Luffy's unpredictable nature had already taken over the next challenge: where to find lunch. Because, really, that's the most important thing in Luffy's world. And with that, the adventure continued, an unpredictable, chaotic, and utterly ridiculous journey into the unknown. As the group made their way deeper into the forest, Luffy's mind was entirely focused on one thing: food. His stomach growled louder than his words, and his eyes darted around, searching for any signs of a snack. It didn't matter what it was: fruit, meat, maybe even some rice. He was just hungry, and that was his number one priority. Tanjiro, still trying to comprehend everything that had happened with Luffy, walked beside him, his thoughts wandering. "I've never met someone like him before," he muttered under his breath, glancing over at his new companion. "His strength, his personality, he's completely different from anyone I've known." Luffy, noticing Tanjiro's puzzled look, flashed a wide grin. "What? You got something to say about my awesomeness?" he teased. Tanjiro blinked and shook his head. "No, it's just, I've never met someone so carefree about everything. You fight a demon, then act like nothing happened. How are you not worried?" Luffy shrugged, still smiling. "Worrying is for people who don't know how to enjoy life. I live for adventure, and if I die, then at least I'll die doing something fun." Tanjiro couldn't help but smile at Luffy's optimism. It was so different from his own serious, burdened life, and yet, there was something refreshing about it. As they continued walking, Luffy's eyes suddenly widened. "Food!" he shouted, pointing excitedly to a fruit tree nearby. He dashed forward at lightning speed, knocking branches aside and plucking the juiciest, ripest fruit he could find. Without hesitation, he bit into it. "Well, that's one problem solved," Luffy said with his mouth full, offering the others the fruit. As Tanjiro and the others laughed, Luffy turned his gaze toward Nezuko, who was quietly walking a little behind them. Luffy had noticed her several times since they met, but for some reason, today, he couldn't help but steal glances at her. Her calm, composed demeanor was like a calming presence amid all the chaos, and the more he saw her, the more intrigued he became. Nezuko, sensing Luffy's eyes on her, looked up for a brief moment, their gazes meeting. There was something in Luffy's eyes, something different. It wasn't the usual goofy curiosity he had when meeting new people. No, this was something warmer, something more personal. Nezuko blinked and quickly turned her head away, slightly embarrassed by the attention. Luffy, unaware of how his gaze was making her feel, scratched the back of his head. "Hey, Nezuko, you want some of this?" he asked, holding out the fruit to her. Nezuko hesitated, then nodded, walking toward him slowly. She took the fruit with a quiet, "Thank you," her cheeks flushing a little at the gesture. Luffy was the kind of guy who never seemed to care about anything, but there was something in the way he looked at her that made her heart flutter just a bit. As the group settled down by a small river to rest, Luffy couldn't stop sneaking glances at Nezuko. He had seen her fight fiercely alongside her brother, Tanjiro, but it was her quiet strength and the way she seemed to always be thinking of others that truly caught his attention. She was different from anyone he had ever met. And, for some reason, that made him want to know her more. He had to admit, he found her intriguing. But unlike the way he pursued countless adventures and challenges in his life, something about Nezuko felt different. She wasn't just a new adventure to conquer or someone to share a meal with. There was something deeper about her. Something that made him want to protect her, to see her smile, to make her feel safe. Luffy sat down across from her, his eyes not leaving her for too long as he spoke. "You know, you're kinda amazing," he said casually. "I mean, you fight demons, but you're not all grumpy like everyone else I've met. You're calm, and that's cool. I like it." Nezuko's eyes widened slightly, her face turning pink. She didn't know how to respond. She was used to fighting and protecting her family, but she wasn't used to receiving compliments, especially not from someone as strange and carefree as Luffy. Thank you, she mumbled, shyly avoiding eye contact. Luffy, noticing her reaction, grinned wider. You know, I've never met anyone who can pull off being all serious and cute at the same time. You're like a total mystery. Nezuko's blush deepened, and she tried to hide her smile. It was strange, Luffy was so blunt, so open with his feelings. She had never met anyone like him before, and the more she thought about it, the more she couldn't help but feel a little flattered. There was something comforting about his honesty, his carefree nature. It made her feel like she could trust him. Tanjiro, watching from the corner of his eye, couldn't help but notice the change in the air. There was something between his sister and Luffy, something that felt different. He smiled softly to himself, happy to see that Nezuko was slowly warming up to someone, even if he was as wild and unpredictable as Luffy. As night began to fall, the group sat around a campfire, eating the rest of their food and talking about the strange world they found themselves in. But Luffy's mind kept drifting back to Nezuko. He wasn't sure what it was about her, but every time he looked at her, his heart felt lighter. There was something about her kindness, her strength, and her quiet resolve that made him want to protect her. It was a feeling he wasn't used to. Luffy wasn't one for words of romance or soft gestures, but deep down, he knew one thing: Nezuko was special. And somehow, in this new world, he found himself wanting to be by her side, whether it was fighting demons or simply sharing a meal together. As the fire crackled, Nezuko caught Luffy looking at her again, and this time, instead of shying away, she met his gaze. The silence between them felt comfortable, almost peaceful. For the first time since she was turned into a demon, Nezuko felt a small flicker of warmth in her heart. Luffy gave her a goofy grin, one that made her feel at ease. I'm glad I met you, Nezuko. You're kinda awesome. Nezuko's heart skipped a beat, and despite her usual reserved nature, she felt a smile tug at her lips. She didn't know what the future held, but she was beginning to believe that, with Luffy by her side, maybe, just maybe, there was hope for something more. And with that, the night carried on with laughter, small conversations, and the quiet understanding between two souls who, despite their differences, had found something in each other that could never be easily explained. The journey ahead was uncertain, but one thing was for sure: Luffy and Nezuko's bond was just beginning to grow stronger. As the night continued, the campfire's warm glow flickered across everyone's faces, creating an almost magical atmosphere. The group sat together, eating and talking, but there was a noticeable shift in the air around Luffy and Nezuko. Luffy was unusually quiet, his goofy demeanor softened, and Nezuko seemed a little more open than she had before. Zenitsu, who had been sitting a little farther away from the group, his usual nervous energy bubbling under the surface, couldn't help but notice the interaction between Luffy and Nezuko. He had been watching them for a while now, his mind racing as he tried to process what was happening. It wasn't just that Luffy and Nezuko were getting along well, no, there was something more. Luffy was paying attention to Nezuko in a way that made Zenitsu's stomach twist. Hey, Tanjiro, Zenitsu whispered to his friend, leaning in with a nervous, almost panicked look. Do you think Luffy and Nezuko are, getting closer? Tanjiro, who had been casually speaking with Inosuke, glanced over at the two of them, noticing how Luffy and Nezuko were laughing at something Luffy had said. It was a relaxed, comfortable kind of laugh, one that Zenitsu had rarely seen Nezuko share with anyone. She always kept to herself, her soft-spoken nature making her hard to read, but with Luffy, there was an undeniable connection. Tanjiro's expression softened, a knowing smile creeping onto his face. Well, it's obvious that Luffy's got a way of making people feel at ease. Nezuko seems more comfortable with him than anyone else she's met in a long time. Zenitsu's brow furrowed, his jealousy rising. Yeah, but, come on, they're like too close. She's never looked at me like that. His voice started to rise in volume, but he quickly lowered it again, noticing that the others were looking at him now. Tanjiro chuckled softly, shaking his head. Zenitsu, you're just overthinking it. Luffy's like this with everyone. He's not the type to hold back, you know that. Besides, Nezuko is her own person. She's not going to choose someone just because they're being nice to her. But Zenitsu didn't hear him. All he could focus on was the way Luffy kept making Nezuko laugh, the way he looked at her with that goofy smile of his, as if she were the only person in the world that mattered. Zenitsu had never been the most confident when it came to his feelings for Nezuko, but now he was really starting to feel the pressure. I'm not jealous. Zenitsu stammered, standing up abruptly and pacing back and forth. I just don't like seeing someone else getting all close and personal with Nezuko. I mean, who does he think he is? Tanjiro raised an eyebrow but didn't press further. He knew that Zenitsu's heart was always in the right place, even if his words didn't always reflect that. Zenitsu had always been like this, overly dramatic and constantly worried about things he shouldn't be. Zenitsu, it's okay, Tanjiro said, placing a hand on his shoulder. You don't need to worry. You're Nezuko's brother, and that's always going to be the most important thing. She values you. Zenitsu looked back toward Nezuko, who was sitting beside Luffy, her face glowing slightly as she tried to stifle her laughter at one of Luffy's silly jokes. His heart twisted in his chest, but despite his jealousy, he knew that Tanjiro was right. Nezuko had always been his sister, and she had never given him any reason to doubt that. Still, Zenitsu couldn't help but feel that pang of insecurity. Was he really that different from Luffy? Did Nezuko see him the same way? Was there something about Luffy that made him so special to her? Meanwhile, Luffy, oblivious to Zenitsu's inner turmoil, continued his antics. Hey Nezuko, you ever try a giant meatball? He asked, his eyes wide with excitement. Nezuko blinked, her expression softening. A giant meatball. Luffy nodded eagerly, his hand gesturing wildly in the air. Yeah, like, really big. I bet it'd be so good. You can add extra sauce, maybe some noodles, and boom. Best meal ever. Nezuko smiled, a small but genuine smile. That sounds delicious, she said quietly. Zenitsu stood from his spot, his fists clenched by his sides, his face flushed with jealousy. What is with you two? He snapped, louder than he intended. Why are you so buddy-buddy all of a sudden? The group turned their attention to Zenitsu, and for a moment, the atmosphere became tense. Nezuko blinked in surprise, unsure of what Zenitsu meant, while Luffy just tilted his head and grinned, completely unbothered. Hey, what's with all the yelling? You're making it sound like I'm trying to steal Nezuko's meatball or something, Luffy laughed, completely unaware of the jealousy bubbling in Zenitsu. Nezuko's face flushed a little, but she quickly brushed it off, offering Zenitsu a kind smile. Zenitsu, it's okay, she said softly, trying to calm him down. Luffy just likes to talk about food, that's all. But Zenitsu, feeling the sting of embarrassment, couldn't stop himself. It's not about the food. It's about you two. You're so close and, he faltered, his words starting to jumble together. Luffy, still eating a chunk of meat with his usual carefree attitude, smirked at Zenitsu. Oh, come on, I'm just being me. Can't a guy make a new friend without causing a scene? Zenitsu clenched his fists, his face redder than ever. It's not just that. It's the way you're always hanging around her. You're always making her laugh, always looking at her like she's something special. Luffy's grin didn't fade, though there was a hint of curiosity in his eyes. Well, she is special, right? Nezuko's a great person. I mean, I'm just trying to be nice. He looked at Nezuko and gave her a thumbs up. You're really strong, and I like that. It's cool. Nezuko's heart skipped a beat as she met Luffy's eyes, the warmth in his expression making her blush. But before she could say anything, Zenitsu spoke again, his voice wavering with frustration. I'm stronger too. Zenitsu said, his voice cracking slightly. I can protect Nezuko. I'm not just some useless guy who stands around. Before Zenitsu could finish, Luffy put a hand on his shoulder with a grin that only Luffy could pull off. Hey, Zenitsu, no one's saying you're useless. In fact, I think you're pretty cool too. I mean, you're always yelling, so you've gotta have some strength in there, right? Nezuko couldn't help but laugh softly at the ridiculousness of the moment. Zenitsu turned a deep shade of red, while Luffy just continued to be the ridiculous, carefree pirate he was. But for a brief moment, Zenitsu felt something inside him relax. Maybe it was because Luffy wasn't trying to take Nezuko from him, but rather just genuinely enjoying her company. Maybe Luffy just saw everyone as an equal. Still, the jealousy in Zenitsu's heart didn't disappear entirely, and he knew he had to step up his game. If he truly wanted to make Nezuko smile the way Luffy did, he'd have to prove it to himself first. And so, as the fire flickered out and the night grew darker, Zenitsu sat silently, his mind racing. One thing was clear: no matter how carefree and bold Luffy was, Zenitsu wasn't going to let go of Nezuko so easily. He had a lot to prove, and now, he was more determined than ever. As for Nezuko and Luffy, their bond was growing stronger, albeit in a way that would leave Zenitsu watching from the sidelines, at least for now. As the night deepened, the forest around them grew quiet, the only sounds being the rustling of the leaves and the occasional crackle of the dying campfire. Zenitsu, still deep in his thoughts, kept his distance from the group, trying to process everything that had happened. He couldn't shake the feeling that something was off. Luffy's carefree nature was infectious, and Nezuko seemed to have taken a special liking to him. Zenitsu couldn't help but feel like he was losing his place beside her. But just as the tension between Zenitsu and Luffy was starting to settle, a sudden, ominous howl broke through the silence. It was distant at first, but it quickly grew louder. The sound sent a chill down everyone's spine. The demons they had fought earlier had been terrifying, but this howl wasn't just any demon. It was something far more dangerous, something even the most seasoned hunters feared. Tanjiro shot to his feet, his face turning serious. "We need to be ready. That howl, it's not normal." Luffy, always excited for a fight, stood up too, his grin wide as ever. "Sounds like it's time for some action," he shouted, his fists clenched in eager anticipation. "Let's go find it." Nezuko's eyes narrowed, her calm demeanor shifting to one of caution as she stood beside her brother. "We should stick together," she said quietly, her voice full of resolve. The group gathered their belongings and prepared for the unknown threat. The howl echoed again, much closer now, sending a shiver through everyone. It was unlike anything they had encountered before, dark, bone-chilling, and full of malice. Zenitsu, despite his usual fear, could feel his heart racing in his chest. He wasn't sure why, but he felt like something more was at play here. This demon, whatever it was, didn't just want to fight. It was targeting them. Specifically, it was targeting Luffy and Nezuko. Zenitsu felt his hands tremble as he reached for his sword. What if it's after Nezuko? Or worse, after Luffy? He muttered to himself. His thoughts were jumbled, but there was no denying it, the feeling in his gut told him that this wasn't just a normal demon encounter. Tanjiro's voice broke through the tension. "Stay focused. We'll deal with this together." He turned to Luffy, who was already bouncing on his heels, eager to rush off into the unknown. "Luffy, let's stick to a plan. We don't know what we're dealing with yet." Luffy nodded, his grin never fading. "No problem. I'm always ready for whatever comes our way." He flexed his muscles dramatically, as if challenging the very air around them. But just as they were about to move forward, the howl came again, this time much closer, much closer. The ground beneath them began to shake, and a shadowed figure emerged from the trees, silhouetted against the moonlight. It was massive, a hulking creature with sharp, jagged claws and glowing red eyes. The air grew thick with the stench of death as it lumbered toward them. Zenitsu's breath caught in his throat. What is that thing?" Tanjiro's eyes widened. "I've never seen anything like it before." Luffy, completely unfazed, took a step forward, cracking his knuckles. "Well, looks like we have a new friend to make," he said, his voice full of excitement. But even he couldn't ignore the overwhelming aura of danger that emanated from the creature. For the first time, there was a flicker of uncertainty in his eyes. The beast roared, its voice booming through the night, shaking the very ground beneath their feet. "It's coming for us," Tanjiro said, his sword ready. Just as they prepared to face this new foe, a sudden, blinding flash of light erupted from the creature, illuminating the entire forest. The ground trembled violently as the beast roared again, sending shockwaves of energy outwards, knocking everyone off their feet. Zenitsu, struggling to stay on his feet, screamed, "What the hell is that thing? What's going on?" But just as quickly as the light had appeared, everything went silent. The beast stopped moving, standing perfectly still. The group, unsure of what to do, stood frozen in place. Then, through the eerie silence, Luffy's voice rang out, sharp and full of determination. "Something's wrong," he said, his eyes narrowing at the motionless creature. "I don't like this." It's like it's waiting for something. Nezuko, her calm demeanor once again taking over, looked at Luffy and then at the creature. We need to figure out what it wants, before it figures out what it can do to us. Tanjiro's eyes were hard with resolve. We don't have much time. Get ready. The air was thick with tension as the group prepared for what they knew would be an all-out battle. But deep down, they all felt it, the sense that this creature wasn't just a random demon. It was something far worse, something that had been summoned for a reason. And whatever that reason was, it was about to bring chaos into their world. As they stood there, waiting for the next move, Luffy glanced at Nezuko once more, his face serious but his eyes filled with an odd protectiveness. He wasn't sure what was going to happen next, but he knew one thing for certain, this fight wasn't going to be easy. And as the first strike was about to be made, a deep, rumbling voice echoed through the forest. You think you can defeat me? You've only just begun to understand what's coming. A chill ran down everyone's spine as they realized they were dealing with something far beyond their comprehension. And just as quickly as it began, the beast lunged forward, faster than any of them could react. And with that, the scene froze. That's it for part 1, guys. Hope you liked this fanfic. Let's set a like target of 40 for this video, and if we hit that, I'll upload part 2. Until then, have a great day and thanks for watching.